really appreciate everybody taking the time to come here today. For those that don't know me, I'm Jeff Wadey-Camper. I'm the airport director here. And I just wanted to let you know we are validating tickets. We're not going to charge you for parking here today. I imagine most folks probably parked in short term. That's totally okay. But if you did park in long term and you pulled a ticket, just let us know. And back here on the bar, we've got the ticket validator. Before you leave, we can validate your parking tickets so you don't have to pay for the parking. Also like to thank the airport commissioners, and you know, they're the ones that really spend a lot of time. The airport commission is it's a volunteer position. They don't get paid for their time, and they put a lot of time and effort into you know, helping manage the airport and establishing what direction we're moving with different things and looking at all the data. And so currently, the current board, Tom McGree's the chair, Mike Muscarelli's the vice chair, Debbie Havens is secretary, Mike Murray is immediate past chair, and then we have Bob Heberly, Bill Birkeland, and Jim Enyart. And some of them are with us here today. We have former airport board member Rick Hayes with us as well. Rick was on the board for 6 years. So we appreciate all the airport commissioners that we have from the past and in the present, and those that are yet to be in the future for all their dedication. So a big round of applause for them, if we could, please. I'd then like to also acknowledge our airport staff. Several of our airport staff are with us here today as well. And if you'd raise your hands if you're part of the airport team, several of the folks are here. And we'd just like to really appreciate our staff. You know, they're the ones that are doing all the hard work behind the scenes. You have to listen to me go on and on about the airport all the time and see my face, but it's really the staff, the 22 other folks in addition to me, which is not a large group, that's really getting things done night or day, you know, whether it's moving snow or safety, security, airport operations, cleaning, maintenance, all that stuff. There's just a lot going on at the airport, as you can imagine. So really appreciate everything the staff does. So with that, we're going to kick this off. And so first, I'm going to kind of give you a little overview of what's going on in the airline industry. I mean, obviously, it's been a tumultuous time for pretty much every industry in you know, in the nation or in the world, you could say, I guess, for the last 3 years. And the airline industry has kind of been no different. There's a lot of things happening, and I just thought it'd be great to kind of give you an overview and give you the facts of what's going on. So Helena passenger traffic, and this is just passengers getting on the plane. So, you know, if you talk about total throughput, you could pretty much double this, people getting on and getting off. But a lot of times airports are usually rated at, you know, passengers getting on. That's just kind of the metric. So that's what I've done here. So you can see in 2019, we had 118,000 enplanements. That was a 6th consecutive record year of growth that we had here in Helena. That was the best year we've ever had. And then, of course, we all know what happened in 2020. And 2021 was kind of the beginning of the rebuild. So numbers went back up a bit. And then 2022, you can see where we ended up the year, down about 30%, unfortunately. But the good news in that is that we're right in what's happening around the nation on average. You know, if you look at this statistic here, 75% of U.S. airports have less air service today than they did before the pandemic, and the average is 31% less. We're at 30%, so we're pretty close right in there of what's happening around the nation as a whole. So we're fortunate in the fact that the flights we do have been running fairly full too, so that's good that they're utilizing the capacity that we have. And you can kind of see it's not just Helena, it's on a national basis, and you look at this map. This is a source here, rallyforairservice.com. That's an interesting website. If you have time, you can go to that, and this coalition has put all the data together on what's happening with air service. And so you can see all the locations around that have lost significant amounts of air service in addition to where we're at today, so it's not just a local issue. Some of the current industry challenges, like so many other industries that you all probably encounter in your day-to-day businesses or organizations, a lot of similar things. Now, with the airline industry, of course, the labor shortage, just like everybody's having, it's in the airline industry too. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. A few years prior to the pandemic, the federal government passed what they call the 1,500-hour rule. So what that says is to be a first officer, you have to have 1,500 hours before you can be a first officer. So that really caused some challenges in the airline industry a few years ago, where that started the pilot shortage. That was one of the issues. And of course, you've got age limitations of 65 years old. There's been talk lately about, you know, should they raise that to 67? You know, we surely won't debate that all today here, but it's nevertheless, it's an issue. The cost of training, I mean, if you want to be an airline pilot and you're starting from scratch, by the time you do all that and get your ratings, it's estimated about $250,000. So it's a pretty big investment to make. Airlines, have made the jobs a lot more lucrative in recent years to kind of combat that, but nevertheless, it is an issue. And then what we call pilot career transitions. I mean, everything from, the military's doing less flying. There's not the same amount of small feeder airlines like the old Big Sky Airlines that we used to have, if you remember that. There's not a lot of those entities around, or, Alpine Air that hauls UPS packages. There's not a lot of those small stepping stones for people to go and work and build hours. And so that's been a challenge. Of course, fuel and labor costs. As I mentioned, the airlines have been drastically increasing the wages that they're paying all their staff, and so that adds into some of the challenges. Fuel costs, economics. 50-seat aircraft are no longer. The airline industry is basically said the 50-seat jet is no longer economically viable. You can't. At today's cost, you can't adequately spread that over a 50-seat regional jet. Now, there's still 50-seat regional jets in markets, but they're drawing those down more and more every year. And you might have seen in the last year, as an example, there were 29 EAS, Essential Air Service, federally subsidized airports that completely lost their air service, and most all those were served by 50-seat regional jets. And that was the result of, a lot of, the pilot shortage and the economics. Prior to the pandemic, the airlines used to always say that if a 50-seat jet was full, 6 seats were profit. So that kind of gave you the idea what the margins were prior to the situation that we're in today. And 67 network airline stations have closed in the United States. So that's a pretty big number when you think about the number of places that have totally been wiped off the map. Of course, operating costs are going up for airports just like airlines. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Airline route profitability, whether you like it or not, the airlines are in business to make money. That's what they're doing. That's what they're trying to do. It's their goal. And so that factors into this. And then the bottom, which is one of the reasons we're here today, is competition among communities and airports. The competition is as fierce as it's ever been, probably going to get more competitive as time goes on, just as resources become scarce. It's just like anything. There's a competition to get those in your community. So we always get the question about ticket prices. Who controls those? What controls those? And there's a lot of things that go into ticket prices, but these are some of the big ones. Some of these items here, different fare classes, obviously economic supply and demand in different markets, yields and profits. There again, they're trying to make a profit, and so they're trying to maximize their profits. So they're always pushing the envelope of how much can they sell the tickets for, and still, fill up an airplane. So that's always a challenge. Competition, costs. Aircraft size, as I talked about, the number of seats and the cost ratio. I get questions about, why are other communities sometimes cheaper than flying out of Helena? Well, these are a lot of the reasons. It's not something that we've done locally here that has affected that, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But one of them is, in some markets, there's bigger airplanes. They can spread those costs over more passengers, so that has an effect. So that's some of the things that we see. And quite honestly, a lot of it, is algorithms online. When you're buying those tickets online, somebody isn't sitting there, a human isn't sitting there and adjusting all those. There's people in revenue management that are inputting those data and algorithms, but a lot of times it's being done, by artificial intelligence. And the one that's, at the bottom here is, as much as I wished I had control directly over the cost of airfares, the airport has no direct control. We can indirectly affect that if we do things wrong, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, how we can indirectly work on that, but we don't control the ticket prices. It's nothing the airport itself is doing. And you look at capital cities, we're very fortunate and happy to be the capital city of Montana. There's a lot of benefits of being a capital city, but however, there are a number of other capital cities that don't have any air service or have very limited or subsidized air service, and this is just a short list of some of the more notable ones here. So just being the capital city is not always the linchpin to ensure that you're going to have all sorts of air service. You can see some of these, like Salem, Oregon, Topeka, Kansas, big communities that are just too close to other hubs. Salem's too close to Portland, Topeka's too close to Kansas City, which are big hubs, so that's a challenge. Some of these other places are close. You look at Cheyenne, Wyoming, that's probably a pretty close comparison to the size city of Helena. And you can see there, to have 2 flights a day, they're subsidized between the state of Wyoming and the city of Cheyenne. Collectively, each year they put up $2.5 million just basically to keep those airlines there. The airports can't do that. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But so that just kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in similar sized airports. And large communities are not immune either. Toledo, Ohio is kind of an interesting example. they're a pretty good sized community. I mean, I think their catchment area is like 350,000 people. They're fairly close to Detroit, which is a CADX hub, so that's their biggest challenge. But Toledo, over the years, they've seen Delta left, then United left, and most recently now American left. So all they have for air service in that community are some occasional Allegiant flights, which are taking people to a leisure destination. So it doesn't really do anything for business travelers and people that are trying to go. If you're going to go to Cincinnati to see your relatives, you're not going to get on an Allegiant flight. That's just not the kind of airline they are. So they've really been challenged with that. It's just one of those things where you realize the big communities can struggle too. Talked a little bit more about subsidized. Now here's a list of airports around us, fairly close to us, that are all subsidized by either their city, their county, and or their state. And pretty heavy duty subsidies. I mean, in the millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Butte and West Yellowstone are in the Federal Essential Air Service program here in Montana, along with the other 5 small communities that are fed out of Billings. So that's part of the federal EAS, but nonetheless, just things worth noting. And so you ask yourself, well, where does that put us? What can we do at the Helena Airport, to counter all of this? And the biggest thing is to have an airport like we're fortunate to have, that's updated and modern and efficient and has all the things that the regulatory requirements are in place that require you to have commercial airline service. It's very, very costly. Give you just a couple of examples off the cuff. This weekend we had a little bit of ice on the runway. We have to de-ice the runway. Costs $10,000 to $12,000 to de-ice the runway one time because you have to use special stuff that's not as corrosive as the stuff they put on the roads. It's limited supplies, it's only a few manufacturers, so it's very expensive. You have to do it. And then you have the next airline flight, the next Embraer 175 lands, and they pay us a $68 landing fee. So you look at, how does the math work out on that? Well, I'll talk more about how we do some of that in a minute, but that just gives you an idea of how expensive. And our insurance, all of our lines of insurance this last fiscal year, to insure all the different things insurance-based we have at the airport was $552,000, So I mean, it's expensive to operate an airport at this level and do that. So we have to minimize those expenses and find other revenues. We've diversified our revenue, so only 17% of our revenue is airline related. That's really unique. Most airports, all their revenue is based on airlines and airport related stuff. The other fact to note is that the airport operation basically funds itself. We're basically self-sufficient financially. We don't get any local taxes, no city, county, or state funding. We used to receive 2 mills up until 1993 when the airport became an airport authority, and at that point in time we gave up the 2 mills and became financially self-sufficient by all the other things that we do. So I just think that's a good fact for folks to know that it sets us apart from a lot of these other airports that are being funded financially from local entities and local governments. And so we got to continue to find new revenues. And the other thing to keep in mind is our airport is unique in the fact too that there's so much else going on than just airline service. I mean, obviously the focus of this today is on air service, but just a reminder that we have diversified and we have lots of other things to be thankful for. I won't go into all those today, but there's just a number of different things that are out there, that take place on our campus, whether it's aerospace manufacturing. We're one of 3 permanent tanker bases in the state of Montana. We've got large military presence. We've got the fire training center. We've got all kinds of non-aeronautical stuff. There's just a lot of things going on our campus. 2,000 people work on the campus each day, so it's quite an economic impact. And another interesting performance metric that a lot of folks don't realize is in terms of aircraft operations. We're obviously not the biggest on the airline game, but in terms of aircraft movements in the airspace, Helena's the 3rd busiest in Montana in terms of total tower operations. Billings and Bozeman are Bozeman and Billings, and then Helena's next. So a lot of folks are fascinated to hear that, so it's just kind of a little piece of trivia I like to throw in. So I talked about what can we do on our end to make sure that we're not inadvertently affecting the cost of tickets out of Helena, or that we're not chasing the airlines away and making a situation where they can't be profitable. So we have to manage our costs. We have to find new revenues, and the thing that's talked about in the airline industry all the time is what they call cost per passenger enplanement, CPE. And so you look at airport use costs, and this chart here shows a number of airports around us in our region, some in Montana, some in other nearby states, and it gives you an idea how we stack up in our cost per passenger to the airlines, what we charge them to use our facility. And you can see here's Helena, and about the only one that's below us is Bozeman, and they're within a dollar on our cost. They're within a dollar, or we're within a dollar of what they are. And you know, I mean, they've got, you saw we had 82,000 enplanements last year. They had over 1 million. So I mean, when you do the math, you figure that out. That's quite a feat that we're proud of, that we've been able to maintain a CPE like that. And I think, you know, that speaks loudly to the airlines. I'm of the opinion that's the reason that we still have 3 airline brands here. Granted, you know, we have limited flights a day now, not what we used to have, but we still have 3 airline brands serving us here today. And I think that'll carry us through, and when we see things improve, I think that'll play an important part to show that we're doing our part to make sure that they can make money here, because at the end of the day, that's the goal for the airlines. You know, another myth that I've heard off and on, I just wanted to dispel is, you know, we're very fortunate. We built our facility, our terminal. It's set up to handle you know, anything out there now. We can handle added capacity. We're in good shape for a long, long time. But the expansion we did not contribute to anything on the increase of airline tickets, what the airlines are charging. We did this project with federal airport improvement program funds, and then we're using airport revenues from other sources to pay some debt service we have on the part that we didn't get covered with federal money. And so we didn't affect the airline rate base at all with that project. And that's rare. I mean, I can tell you, pretty much every other airport in the state and in the country, that's not the case. And there are some that they're lumping the whole project on the backs of the airlines. And I think you might see that play a factor in the future at some point in other markets as well. But we haven't done that because we just knew if we did, we've probably set ourselves up for failure. We've done $45 million of improvements in the last few years. I mean, everything from the terminal expansion, rebuilt the entire primary runway, did a partial rehab on one of our secondary runways. The whole general aviation south side of the airport got reconstructed over a few years, you know, rehabilitated and rebuilt the fire training center. We bought new fire trucks, snow equipment, emergency communication system, and we've done so many improvements. There's a long laundry list, but 45 million, and that's just the airport itself. That doesn't include all of our tenants and stakeholders and businesses, you know, that have invested huge amounts of money. Pioneer Aerostructures, Boeing, the National Guard. I mean, private hangar owners. There's on and on and on. There's been a lot of investment on the campus, so that's quite an economic impact. So what else we can do as the airport? You talk about air service recruitment and incentives. So recruitment, you know, it's an ongoing relationship thing. It's just like any business thing. It's about relationships. The challenge in the airline industry today, like so many industries, is that it's a constantly evolving, changing group of people. You know, we're talking to folks and getting good communications with them, and the next thing you know, well, I haven't heard from so-and-so in a couple of weeks. I wonder why, you know, and then you try and reach out and you talk to a few other people, and oh yeah, now they're working over somewhere else, and it's, you know, it's a new person, so you got to start at square one again and have that related. And that's not just affecting us, it's affecting, you know, every airport, but it's more ever-changing than it's ever been. So we really have to keep up on that and keep the relationships going so that they can understand that Helena is unique and understand that it's an important market for them and that they need to be here. We've got an air service consultant we've hired to help us with that. We've got Mike Boyd from Boyd Group International. We've worked with him in the past. We've worked with other consultants. We worked with Mark Sixel. Mark Sixel from Sixel Consulting was the one that helped us get the American Airlines grant that I'll talk about in a minute. Sadly, Mark passed away unexpectedly a couple of years ago, and so we're using Mike Boyd now. But Mike Sharp, he's well known in the industry, and you know, having those folks can really help us build the relationships and keep them. Of course, we're always championing Helena. Every time I talk to the airlines, they probably get sick of listening to me talk about how good Helena is, but that's what we have to do. We have to champion our community and make sure people understand what's here. Incentives is a big one today. I mean, you pretty much, to get new air service, you've got to have incentives. And you look at some of these things here. I mean, the FAA approved, we put together, the Airport Authority adopted an incentive program that allows for up to 2 years that any new air service, so whether it's a current airline that's here or any new airline, if they bring in new service, they don't have to pay the airport to use the airport facility any fees for up to 2 years. Legally, that's what the FAA allows. We put together a incentive program. It's for all airlines. You can't discriminate. You have to give it to everybody, which we gladly do. We had the FAA approve that, and so we have that in place, and we've been offering that as part of our packages to all the airlines that we've been talking to. In January of a year ago, January 2022, we did kind of a unique thing. We knew 2022 was going to be another year that initially the airlines were struggling, and there were a lot of the route cuts were happening. So we waived all airline fees for our existing airlines, for all 3 airlines, for that entire month, just to make a statement that, hey, we're in this with you. We really appreciate your service. It was a challenge for us to do that. I mean, we don't have, we're not a rich airport. We don't have a lucrative budget, but we looked at it and we were strategic about how we did it, and we went forward with that. And I think that that really made a statement to them that we're really trying to make sure that it works for everybody. And you look at the bottom stat here. I mean, in 2022, over 300 airports and communities offered over 200,000, a minimum of over 200,000 for incentives. So I mean, that kind of gives you the idea of how competitive it's getting out there in the world for air service. I took this quote from a article that I read, and so Andrew Levy, he's the CEO of Avelo Airlines, which is a new low-cost startup that's just only been out a couple of years, but he used to formerly work for Allegiant Airlines. And so this was his opinion of, if you want more air service, make the cost of doing business at your airport cheaper. So I mean, that's just to give you an example. That's truly what the airlines feel like, so that's kind of what we're up against. One of the other things we did this year, which many of you in this room participated in and supported and even donated money to, and we greatly appreciate the support and thank you so sincerely for that, is the Montana Airline Rendezvous that we held here in Helena last September. And that was kind of a unique event where we brought the airlines out here to Helena, to Montana, so they could come see our community, see our state, and get an idea here what's going on. So often we go to these, they call them speed dating sessions, and you go to Miami or Las Vegas or somewhere like that, and you're in a hotel in the convention center, and they say, okay, you got 15 minutes with each airline, and you're trying to tell them everything great about Helena and hatch some deal in 15 minutes, and the bell rings and they kick you down the road to the next airline, and that's great. I mean, you get to meet and have some discussions briefly. But we all, and this was a collective idea, all the airports in Montana, we were talking a few years ago, and we said, we just need to get them out here and see Montana. So we decided, let's work together and do that. We were taking turns hosting the rendezvous. Last year was our year, and I think that really made an impact. We had 6 of the airlines here. There's about 10 out there today, and we invited all of them. Some of them couldn't come, unfortunately, but the ones that came, I think we really had an impact on them. We've had some great conversations with them since, and I think as things start to get straightened out in the world, that's got to definitely benefit us. But all these folks are some of our major sponsors, and I just wanted to acknowledge them again and thank them for that, because it really was a team effort and a community effort to show off our community. Not everything is bad. There's some good stuff. I mean, Alaska Airlines, as you know, they converted to the Embraer 175 jet from the Q400 here back on October 6th. Q400 is an awesome airplane. It served us well, but they made the decision in the Horizon Air side to go to the 175 jet, and so they're phasing out all the Q400s, and we were fortunate. And that was another reason why we did the project we did on the terminal in 2018 through 2020, is we knew years ago this was going to happen. And you can see this jet bridge here. I mean, we have that jet bridge now that can handle that. We had 2 jet bridges before, but the configuration we had, we would have really challenged with serving that airplane, especially if it came when we had our other flights here or if we had any additional service. So that was one of the driving factors. And so we were plug and play. They showed up with the jet, and everything worked out pretty well, and we're fortunate to have that. We are working with them pretty hard on the second daily flight. You might remember back in 2020, May of 2020, we had just hatched a deal to get that second Seattle flight right before the pandemic hit, and then that kind of killed that. So we're trying to rekindle that. Alaska's definitely interested. They're very, very interested and committed to doing it. It's just a matter of when and how soon they can do it based on all the things I've talked about with pilots and fleet transition. So just have to be patient, and I think that eventually we'll see that come to play. American Airlines, so we've been working on this for a number of years, and so many of you, so many of you in the room have helped us with that effort, and I greatly appreciate that. I mean, we can't do it without the help of the community. But kind of where we're at with that is, now that we're looking at, initially, as you may have heard, it was Phoenix was the interest that American had with us. Well, then they got to looking at it as the pandemic occurred and afterwards and said, probably need to really look at Dallas first, because that's their biggest hub. There's 270 daily destinations you can connect to, so you can go anywhere basically domestically or internationally out of Dallas if you can get to their hub. And they felt like that was probably the initial focus, and then at a later date, maybe you'd look at Phoenix at a later date. And so we ended up looking at that, and we had to reach out to US DOT and get that approved. And on our air service grant, so 2 years ago now, we applied for an air service grant for this purpose. We had a letter of support from American Airlines, and like I said, so many of you gave local cash donations from your organizations so we could have the local money to get that grant. So that particular grant cycle, there were 78 grant applications, the most grant applications DOT's ever had, and it was a huge ask. We were one of them selected. They only awarded 22. We were one of the 22 that got it. And out of the 22 that got a grant, we were the largest grant in the nation that they gave away. And not only that, it's the largest grant that any airport in Montana has ever received from that program in its history. And this is what we received, just over $1 million from that program. And then, of course, all the local donations and the in-kind, that adds up, plus our airport incentive package, which we estimated if they did 2 flights a day to Dallas on a 175 jet with an 85% load factor, we estimate that's what the value of our fee waiver would be. So when you add that all up, it's a little over $1.6 million sitting there ready to go for them. And they're very, very interested. They think Helena has a great opportunity for them. But they're dealing with the same challenges that every other airline is dealing with right now. And not only that, the last few months they've been going through pilot union negotiations. And so, that gets to be kind of a slippery deal where the pilots have basically said, you've taken on too many routes. We haven't got enough of us. You're stretching us too thin. So they said, well, the leadership is sure not going to add a new station in when they're in the middle of this because that's just pouring fuel on the fire. So we just have to wait until they kind of get through that. They've resolved the issue with about half of that group now with their one affiliate, and I think they're finishing it up with the other. So we're hopeful at some point in 2023, maybe that'll finally be the year that we'll see American commit and say, okay, we're going to start service into Helena. That'd be outstanding to have that and have a new airline. Then we'd have all 4 network carriers. That are United, Alaska, Delta, and American. I mean, those are it. The rest of them are low cost and point-to-point carriers. So that'd be pretty good for a community our size. There's not many non-tourism gateway communities, and I'm not saying we don't have tourism, but I mean like Aspen or Bozeman or something like that. There's not many communities that aren't those kinds of locations that can brag and say they've got all 4 network airlines. So we'd be kind of unique in that respect. And the other thing that goes along with it is American has, since 2020, they've made lots of cuts too. In fact, 3 of these they just made in the last few days, and so they're still making some cuts in their system. The positive spin on this, though, that I'm hopeful for is, they're cutting these because they can't handle everything that's going on out there with the resource shortages and pilots and all that. But they cut a lot of these. They see Montana as an opportunity for growth, and so we may be a benefit where they start service in Helena. They may not go back into some of these places, but they start in Helena. So I think there's a positive aspect there that as they're canceling those, that might open up the doors for us to get our deal done. Delta to Minneapolis, I know everybody's really wondering about that. We are too. That's one of the best services that we've had over the years. It always did well, performed very well, and Delta acknowledges that. I've even talked to their vice president about it, and he said, yeah, we got to get that back in there somehow. It's just the same challenges that everybody else is having with pilots and resources. And so what we've done to try and get ahead of that and maybe try and get on the list higher than other places is, of course, our airport fee waiver. So I asked the FAA the question. I said, so what constitutes new service? And they said, well, why are you asking? So I told them the situation, said, well, Minneapolis, we lost it in March of 2020, hasn't come back, and they said, well, the general rule is if it's been gone for 2 years and comes back, then it's new service. So they're allowing us to provide our incentive, our 2-year no airport fee incentive to Delta Airlines if they bring the Minneapolis flight back. So that, to me, is a big deal. They can come in here and operate for 2 years at no airport cost. So we've made sure they're aware of that. They're aware of that. They appreciate it. They think that's great. But I think at some point we're going to see this flight back. It's just a matter of when. But we're having ongoing communications. In fact, we've got a meeting coming up with them here in a couple of weeks to talk about this and regroup again and just kind of keep the ball moving forward. So hopefully we'll have something on that at some point to get that back in place. And that kind of brings us to one of the reasons why we're here today. Not only did I want to give you an update on what's going on in the industry, but wanted to kind of tell you about something that we're kicking off that we're very excited about. Called the Helena Air Service Alliance. And so the alliance is mission is to maintain and grow air service which benefits the community through access to airline networks, job growth, economic development, and local quality of life improvement. So we all know that air service plays a lot of roles in a vital, healthy community. And we've been working with these entities, these core groups that are getting together and formalizing this group today for a number of years, but we just have never formalized it. We decided, it's time to take it to the next step and form this group and move forward and take it to the next level. So that's what we're doing. So we've got some core stakeholders here, which, these four groups are kind of the core stakeholders. Certainly we're looking to work with anybody and everybody in the community. We have to do this together. It's imperative that we work as a group because there's a lot of things that the airport can't do by itself. Like, for instance, the airport legally cannot use airport funds for, revenue guarantees, incentives, certain marketing things, stuff like that. It's federally illegal, and I think the reason that they've set that up is they don't want some rogue airport director to bet the farm on some airline and then financially cripple the airport. There's reasons they put that in place, but nonetheless, that's the challenge. There's only so much control the airport can do on its own. So that's why a lot of communities, including us, have worked within the community to generate locally generated revenues and cash that can be used for those other purposes. And the Chamber and MBAC and the Tourism Alliance have been very helpful to facilitate that and facilitate those funds. We're just formalizing it now and moving it to the next level, and we really need the community's help to keep doing this so we can move forward. Some of the things that we're going to do, we really need to have, if you want to call it, a community-funded war chest. We worked hard to get the money to support the Air Service Grant for American, but as we're having these conversations with other airlines, something will come up, and we want to be ahead of that. So say, for instance, we get struck a deal with Southwest or something like that, and they say, well, if we're going to come in there, we need, some revenue guarantees, or we need you to really do some marketing or something of that nature. We need to be ready to go so we can say, yeah, we're set. We've got a fund over here. We can do that. You don't want to be saying, well, can you give us about 6 months and let's go see if we can raise it, and then we'll get back to you, because then by that time they're going to be somewhere else. So we just need to stay ahead of it, be proactive, because air service recruitment's not going to be a one and done thing. I mean, we get American in here at some point, for instance. There's going to be the next thing. We're talking to all the airlines. I mean, rest assured, if there's an airline out there, we're talking to them. I mean, we've been talking to them. We're beating on their door. We're trying every angle we can. And so we just need to be better prepared for it. And that's kind of what we're working for today. So you ask yourself, what can you do to help specifically? You might laugh at the first one, but fly out of Helena. I mean, I understand that there may be times you might find cheaper tickets in Bozeman and those things, and you have to do what you have to do. I mean, I understand that, but I guess it's just one of those things. If it's possible to use the airport, because that's the thing. If we can keep the numbers strong, that will go in our favor. I mean, if all of a sudden we start to deteriorate what we have, then it's going to be tougher to get new flights. I know that's a double-edged sword, but and then of course, if you can donate money to the effort, and we've seen in the past, and that's what I think really won us our air service grant, because the Department of Transportation had mentioned that we had a lot of skin in the game from all walks of life. I mean, we had donors that gave us $100, and we had donors that gave us $50,000. I mean, and everywhere in between. And I think that's the beauty is if you're an individual, a business owner, a local government organization, or what have you, if you can give to this effort, we'd encourage you to do so, and we'd like to do this on an ongoing basis. So there might be some times where you say, we got a tight budget this year, we just can't do it. Yeah, totally understandable, no big deal, but then the next year you have a windfall and you think, I'd like to make a donation and help out that group. Love to have you do that too. So we just kind of need to keep building that going forward, and that's what Bozeman's done. They've had the ability to have entities like the Yellowstone Club and things like that that have helped them with deep pockets. But that's kind of the goal of what we're looking for. And then of course stay informed, help spread the facts about what's going on with the airport, what we're working on, that we are doing everything we possibly can to go in the right direction. If you go to this web address on our helenaairport.com website, and there's a link right on our homepage. But if you go to, there's a tab that says Air Service Recruitment. We've just recently developed that, so you can go there and read about things happening. We're updating that constantly with information so people can get on and see what's going on, what's the status of this and that. And if people have questions, certainly you can reach out to me anytime as well. But with that, I'd like to introduce Callie Asham, President and CEO of the Helena Chamber of Commerce. She's got some comments she'd like to make. Thank you, Callie. Thanks. Oh, thanks. Joe.
Thanks so much. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Callie Asham. I'm President and CEO of the Helena Area Chamber of Commerce. And we're so proud to be working with Jeff and his staff at the airport through the Alliance. This partnership is not new, as Jeff mentioned, but it is renewed. As we continue to recover from the pandemic, we know that airline service is important as ever as to our membership and to our community. As Jeff mentioned, the partnership's mission is to maintain and grow air service, which benefits our community through the access to airline networks, job growth, economic development, and the local quality of life. The Chamber believes that the airport and its campus are an integral part and driver of the Helena area economy. Community support is vital to the success of the airport and its contributions to Helena and the surrounding area. Through the renewal of this partnership between the airport, the Chamber, and MBAC, we plan to work with the community to raise awareness through events like these and to raise funds to continue to recruit those extra airlines. We're so excited to see you here today. Your being here shows that you too believe in the value of the Helena area's airport and its campus. Personally, as a professional traveler, I wish. As a passionate traveler, I love what the Helena Regional Airport has to offer. And we are so fortunate to have Jeff and his staff thinking outside the box to provide local, convenient air travel. As we work through the next steps of developing this alliance, please stay tuned for ways to give to support our alliance and for more information as we continue to focus on our mission. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks. Thank you, Callie. Really appreciate it. And then I'd like to also introduce Brian Obert with Montana Business Assistance Connection.
So I should have just fallen down and that would have made everything work. I didn't bring anything up. Jeff came up and said, "You're talking, aren't you?" And I said, "Sure." I think the one big thing is Rick is very aware. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, we were struggling to find interest in Helena. I mean, we get a few things here and there. Byron, I mean, what are we seeing now? We have businesses that are popping up, expanding. We have a couple hospitals now in town, or one that's coming in. Billings Clinic is, eating on our door out here. We look at Pioneer and now Boeing. We're somewhere and we're growing right now. And one of the things I did want to ask Jeff, isn't Great Falls now trying to get an assistance grant through DOT to help moving forward?
They got one.
They did get one.
Same thing we're after with American, yep.
Exactly. But when did they do it and when did we do it?
We got our grant first and they got theirs just this last cycle.
The Gretzky effect. You need to be skating to where the puck is going to be, not where the puck is right now. I just have to, Ross and everybody out here at the airport, this group has been doing great things of getting us to where the puck is going to be. And now with Callie, with Andrea, with the T-Bid and everybody else, it feels like we have our moment in time in Helena to start to get our swagger back and be the capital city. And we're really one of those, we think we're at that point where we need to be the capital city and really take advantage of things. We see this airport as being one of kind of the heartbeat. Mary Collins, West Vice with East Helena, it feels like everybody's coming together, pulling at the same time. So now the question is how do we close the deal and get some things moving along? We think there's great opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. Well, we really appreciate the partnerships that we have here in Helena, and I think, just this group coming together, is just what we need to do going forward. We're very excited about it. As you've heard from Callie and Brian, lots happening in the community, as you all know. All right. Well, with that, I really appreciate, sincerely, I know everybody's very, very busy, so it's great to see everybody taking time out of your day to come out here. And there again, if you've got things that come up, or you've got questions about stuff, or you want to contribute or help, if you want to donate, get a hold of Callie. If you've got airport questions that you want to find out about, reach out to me anytime. Call me, email me, stop by. I'm happy to talk to folks and enjoy visiting about what's going on. And it helps me to get the feedback of what you're seeing and what your interests are, so then that way we kind of have a pulse on the community of what people are looking for and what we should be thinking about too. So with that, thank you so much for your time, and look forward to, we'll have a follow-up email coming out that'll have a link to this video, have some information from Callie, as she mentioned, about donating. So we'll follow up with all of you, and certainly tell folks that you know and work with, if they want to become involved in this as well, make them aware of it, and we'd love to have, we're going to have to do it together as a community, and so we're looking forward to that. So thank you, and have a great day.